Hello everybody and welcome to Notorious Yugioh. I am Notorious Guy and this is a Chimera Runick deck profile. Wait, don't turn off the video, I'm sorry I said Runick. I swear, we're not playing any floodgates. See everybody? Not a floodgate in sight. Now that you're willing to hear me out, let's get into the deck profile. We're going to go over the Chimera engine first because I believe the Runick engine is pretty well known at this point. We're playing standard Chimera ratios. We're playing 3 Gazelle, 3 Coddle, 3 Mirror Sword Knight, 2 Berfomet, and 3 Chimera Fusion. This engine forms a tight resource or advantage loop that also gives you access to a flexible, disruptive set of fusion toolbox monsters. I'm going to go briefly over each one of these cards. If you're looking for a more prolonged description, please check out my Chimera Fusion What You Need to Know video. Each member of the Chimera Fusion fan club has their own role, but each individual piece can get you to any other piece if you put a little bit of effort into it. Gazelle searches Berfomet or Chimera Fusion. Berfomet searches Gazelle and Chimera Fusion. Coddle can add any monster that mentions Chimera Fusion and gives your cards conditional targeting protection. And Mirror Sword Knight summons any monster that mentions Chimera Fusion and gives you a conditional monster negate. Chimera Fusion is a quick play fusion spell that's restricted to the main phase and can be recycled back to your hand from the graveyard, provided you have Chimera, the flying mythical beast, on your side of the field or in the graveyard. Don't worry, you don't have to play the old vanilla fusion. There's extra deck monsters that take that name while they're on the field or in the graveyard. Here's the best possible play loop using just your Chimera cards. Open Coddle. Coddle effect to search Mirror Sword Knight, summon Mirror Sword Knight, summon Berfomet, Berfomet search Gazelle and Chimera Fusion. Use Chimera Fusion to summon Chimera, the king of phantom beasts from the extra deck. Use Gazelle's effect in graveyard to search an illusion. Use Berfomet's effect in graveyard to reborn Mirror Sword Knight. Use Chimera, the king of phantom beasts effect to rip a card from your opponent's hand during the end phase. Add the Chimera Fusion from your graveyard back to the hand, set Chimera Fusion, and then use that Chimera Fusion during your opponent's main phase to access your toolbox monsters to disrupt your opponent. Next up is the Runick engine. All you really need to know is we are playing 17 Runicks in this deck list. That gives us a pretty good opportunity to open at least 2 of them, which is what you're aiming for. I feel like we don't really need to explain the Runicks too much past that because they're pretty well known at this point. If you don't know what the Runick cards do, cherish your innocence, please. Let's just move directly to talking about how the 2 engines complement each other. The Chimera engine brings a competent game plan that can function on its own, a relatively low investment resource loop that excels at getting cards in hand and bodies on the field, novel and, to be honest, annoying ways of interacting with your opponent via our fusion toolbox monsters, and a natural grind game due to their tight resource loop and the innate stickiness that illusion monsters have. Remember, all of the illusion monsters in our deck list cannot be destroyed by battle and also cannot destroy anything by battle. The Runick engine brings an easy way to put bodies on the field without committing to your normal summon. Those bodies line up incredibly well with the material requirements of our fusion toolbox monsters. The bodies provided by Runick can be used to tribute summon Berfomet. It sounds trivial, but every Chimera player knows the pain of a Berfomet plus 4 non-engine cards in their starting hand. Runick also provides draw power to make finding the best parts of your Chimera engine easier, and extra interactive and disruptive tools to complement the relatively low ceiling of the Chimera combo plays. Let's finish the main deck discussion by talking about our non-engine cards. I'm playing 3 copies of Triple Tactics Talent, 3 copies of Super Poly, and 2 copies of Called by the Grave. The Called by the Grave is here because we need to protect Mirror Sword Knight from Ash Blossom, and we need to protect Berfomet from something like a Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill or an Effect Veiler. And we also want to protect the Hugin from the same things. We need access to Fountain, and unfortunately in Master Duel, or fortunately, Runick Fountain is at 1 copy, meaning it's much harder to hard open it than it is in other formats. Triple Tactics Talent is there to help punish our opponents if they do end up hand trapping Hugin or Mirror Sword Knight or Berfomet. But if our opponent does interact with us incorrectly, or we just happen to open the right engine pieces to beat the hand traps that they have, ripping a card from your opponent's hand with the talent is incredibly powerful when you consider that our Chimera in the extra deck will also rip a card from their hand. You could potentially put your opponent down 2 cards before they even get to start playing. The draw 2 is probably the most important part of the talent style. If you only have access to one part of your engine, and that part of your engine is stopped, the draw 2 is highly likely to get you access to the other engine. Super Poly is in here as just kind of a bomb. This deck struggles going second. because you can't really stop your opponent from setting up at all. You're forced to let your opponent do whatever they want to do, and then attempt to outgrind them and slowly break their board and whittle down their resources over time. Super Poly is great for that because it's unrespondable, and we've accommodated our extra deck to make sure we almost always have a target for Super Poly. Let's move on to our extra deck really quick. We have 2 Hugin. Since we only have 1 Fountain, you don't really need to play the 3rd copy of Hugin. Once Fountain is in rotation, you need to protect it with your life. We have 1 copy of Gary that's here to get the Fountain back in case we fail to protect it. This is a card I've considered playing an additional copy of just because it's always nice to have the option to get the Runick Fountain back from the graveyard. And additionally, Gary is a beast monster, so it lines up very well with your Chimera engine. We're playing 2 copies of Chimera, the King of Phantom Beasts, because it's probably the most important extra deck monster. Constantly being able to rip cards off your opponent's hand is very good for your grind game. The 2nd copy is also nice to have in there in case your opponent has something like a Chimera Unicorn that you have to play into. And in addition to that, having cards that are named Chimera the Flying Mythical Beast while they're on the field are essential for the strategy because they turn on all of the Chimera engine bonus effects. Baphomet is another one of those monsters that becomes Chimera the Flying Mythical Beast while it's on the field, and this one is pretty decent. Normally Baphomet is used to put your Chimera engine pieces into the graveyard so you can then reborn them with the Chimera. But it also has a more sinister and insidious use that we are not taking advantage of. Baphomet can send any beast, fiend, or illusion from your deck to the graveyard. There are a myriad of floodgate targets that you could then Foolish Burial and revive with the Chimera. The most common one would be Barrier Statue of the Abyss, but we're not playing that because I assured you that this would be a base deck profile. You could tell this is a base deck profile very simply. Based, not based. Based, not based. Based, not based. Back to based. Okay, now that we've reestablished that this is a based Runick deck profile, let's move on to the rest of our extra deck targets. Our Fusion Toolbox monsters are the honorary Chimera Fusion archetype monster, Guardian Chimera. This is a card that sometimes I wish I could play 3 of because it creates so much advantage and it's so disruptive for your opponents, and this deck takes forever to win the game because you do not have a battle phase. And when you do finally get a battle phase, the Chimera engine is not the greatest at assembling 8,000 points of damage. So the 3rd one comes up just to bleed your opponent dry of resources. That is our primary game plan. If you are signing up to play this deck, you are signing up to play a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Every duel, unless you match up against somebody who surrenders the minute they see a Runick card. Then we have Magnum the Reliever. This guy is actually very important because you can use it to shuffle back the Chimera Fusion to get an extra draw. This is essential sometimes for getting yourself access to a 2nd Runick card so you can turn on Fountain and gain more resources. Additionally, having a pop anytime your opponent does something is pretty good. Then we have Dragostapelia. Everybody knows Dragostapelia. Place a counter, change to level 1, negate the effects. Last up are our Super Poly targets. Mudragon, Garura are the 2 most common and popular ones that everybody knows, but we're also playing Earth Golematic Nister. This is great for going against Mathmech if they end on Heat Soul plus the big Firewall Dragon. Additionally, Snake Eyes will sometimes find themselves with a Cyberse monster and a Link monster on the board at the same time. Drago Quest is in here for any one of the big Wombo combo decks like Super Heavy Samurai that is going to make a Borlo Savage or Dispotter and Baron de Fleur. Being able to knock out 2 negates with 1 fusion monster is essential for ensuring you can actually play when going 2nd. The last monster that I forgot to mention with all of our Runick stuff is Sleipnir. Probably because Sleipnir comes up the least, but it is a decent grind tool. I'm reluctant to use the word stall, but that is kind of Sleipnir's role in the deck. It is there to constantly remove stuff from your opponent's field, being a diet SP Little Knight for those of you familiar with the TCG, and the tokens that it gives you are great for walling up and defending yourself, or for turning into Guardian Chimera. Alright everybody, that's going to be it for the deck profile. Please let me know how you liked it. Please try out the deck. I know it's a little expensive, but if you already have the pieces laying around, it's a lot of fun to play. As I mentioned earlier, when you sign up to play this deck, you are signing up to play a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! It is very hard to actually properly end the duel by inflicting 8,000 damage to your opponent, so you're going to have to grind it out. A lot of times, your games will go to deck out, or to the point at which all of your opponent's important cards have finally been banished. Alright everybody, that's going to be it for me today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Be safe, have fun.